Right now, when it comes to J. Cole and Drake, we're learning that whatever bond they had is way more fractured than anybody expected. And as Drake stands completely spiral on Cole, they're struggling to accept that it's no longer just Kendrick and the wider rap world making them look crazy. But now, Cole is in that mix too. Trust me, they are heated today. So before we even dive in, go ahead and like, subscribe, and turn up, because with this average Drake fan moving like this, we're gonna need backup. And let me preface all of this real quick by saying to the Drake stans and that whole community, this mess is self-inflicted. Because instead of standing 10 toes on your own beliefs, you kept pretending artists like J. Cole automatically co-sign every conspiracy you throw at Kendrick Lamar or anybody else. Enjoying that, you built imaginary guardrails to excuse how embarrassing this has all looked, rooted in pure delusion, exaggeration, and outright lies to make Drake, OVO, and the lawsuit narrative seem tougher than it ever was for nearly 2 years. But sometimes, both rap and real life move fast, and that's exactly what's happening now, because barely 48 hours after J. Cole popped back out with the Birthday Blizzard mixtape, the truth about Drake and Cole is coming into focus, including where they really stand, what sparked the rift, and just how ugly it's been behind the scenes. And while plenty of people have weighed in on this situation and the tension between them, especially after Cole took shots at Drake on a new freestyle, we've seen some of the most desperate coping and deflecting imaginable. Like suddenly there's some mystery rapper who's sold out to labels, gambles non-stop, runs bots, and checks every nasty box Cole mentioned. And if the diss itself somehow wasn't clear enough, despite delusional Drake stans insisting Cole was talking about Kendrick, which makes zero sense in any of those bars, well, reality has officially arrived. Because now they're fully crashing out after one of Drake's closest friends and most loyal media voices gave us the reaction that explained everything. And that was none other than Mal on the Rory and Mal podcast. At the same time, they broke down Cole's project bar by bar and unpacked all the implications tied to Cole dissing Drake while revisiting what used to be the biggest rap rivalry ever. Mal eventually snapped and said that on this album, referring to the falloff, Cole better explain why he did what he did. He better explain why he talked to Kendrick and then never spoke to Drake again for the rest of his life. He needs to explain that. And with way more emotion than I'm giving it right now, Mal went on a full-blown rant with much stronger language, where the biggest Drake defender accidentally revealed that Cole and Drake haven't spoken since the apology and since the beef kicked off. And all of that traces back to a phone call that J. Cole allegedly had with Kendrick Lamar, which, whatever was said in that conversation, clearly pushed Cole away from Drake for good, permanently. And with that, the key thing to understand right away is that Mal isn't just some random media mouthpiece. He's actually one of Drake's real friends. And Mal and Drake have they've had a real friendship for nearly 2 decades. And unlike most people around Drake, they actually talk. And Drake clearly feeds Mal way more real information than he gives to almost anyone else during those little gossip sessions. That's exactly why Mal gets so emotionally unhinged watching his guy end up looking like the loser here. And that's also why he defends him in this non-stop embarrassing way that only makes him look worse. With that said, I have to be fair and say that while Mal should never be your first stop for reliable reporting, when he's speaking directly on behalf of his close friend Drake and sharing details that would only come from Drake himself, it really wouldn't make sense to dismiss it. Because Mal gains nothing from saying this, and it doesn't help Drake's image at all. If anything, it hurts it. And just to stack on to the credibility, which I cannot believe I'm doing with Mal of all people, but here we are, if you rewind to a clip from 2024, before Kendrick dropped GNX, but after the October beef, Rory was already speculating on the show that J. Cole had quietly stepped away from Drake because he started collaborating with A$AP Rocky and Daylight, both of whom were clearly aligned with Kendrick, or at least anti-Drake after everything went down. Back then, Mal snapped back and basically said, "Are you really surprised Cole and Drake aren't cool?" Because while defending Drake, he admitted that Cole left him hanging during the beef, and Drake never viewed him the same afterward. So when you line those conversations up, look at where Mal stands with Drake and the fact that he gains absolutely nothing by making this up since it only makes Drake look stranger, it feels pretty obvious that during one of those Drake and Mal gossip calls, where they're probably talking about God knows what, and trust me, I wouldn't want to be on that line anyway, Drake straight up told him they weren't speaking and that Cole hadn't reached out since the beef. And when you really think about the way Mal let that information slip altogether, if what he's saying is true, that since Kendrick Lamar and Cole spoke on the phone, Cole hasn't contacted Drake for almost 2 full years now. Come on, be honest. Kendrick Lamar really might be the boogeyman. Because even with limited behind-the-scenes knowledge, why would Mal, of all people, try to make Kendrick seem more powerful or intimidating, unless that phone call truly shattered Cole's relationship with Drake? However you want to frame it, and however you want to imagine how that conversation actually went, first off, what could Kendrick have possibly said to Cole about Drake that instantly created the distance we're now seeing and just finding out about today? And then I've got to ask, even though we don't know exactly when this phone call happened, is it possible it went down before Not Like Us and before that line where Kendrick said he'd do Cole foul, why you still pretending? Because if you really try to connect the dots, could that bar be referencing something that happened behind the scenes between Drake and Cole? Something Cole confided in Kendrick on the call, and Drake knew exactly what was being alluded to when the record dropped, even though the rest of us had no clue and maybe never will. Listen, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't fully know what to believe yet, but there's way too much information, way too many coincidences, and way too many things suddenly lining up against Drake for this all to be random. Because if there's one thing Mal consistently does well, it's accidentally revealing whatever Drake has been gossiping to him about and the narratives Drake himself is pushing behind the scenes. And for the Drake stans still clinging to the denial that Cole completely cut Drake off, that they're not speaking, and that Drake is now isolated from the other 2 members of the so-called Big Three, no matter how you rank them, what they keep pointing to, desperately trying to maintain these guardrails of delusion, is good old Port Antonio, where Cole told Drake they'd always be cool, always be brothers, and he'd never forget what they built together. And here's my take on that. At the time that song was made, Cole and Drake still weren't speaking, and that record felt more like Cole reaching out, testing the temperature, and seeing where things stood not just with Drake, but with Kendrick too after the beef settled. And then we saw something else that matters a lot, because J. Cole just released the 2nd CD cover for The Falloff, along with a full written explanation of the album. And in that description, he says this: "The Falloff cover that's currently circulating is a picture I took on a disposable camera when I was 15 years old." He goes on to explain how that room was his first setup, where his earliest beats were made, surrounded by his mom's CD collection that he dug through for samples. He talks about writing his very first meaningful song in that chair, replaying it over and over, mind blown that he even created something like that. He describes calling Nervous Wreck immediately just to record it and entering a mental space he'd never felt before, trying to explain a creative high that almost feels spiritual. He compares it to God letting you into heaven for a few hours, leaving behind a glow that sticks with you long after you're done. And then he explains why that image felt perfect for an album he made with the ending already in mind. But here's the key part. He says that 2 years ago, after the events that still feed the algorithm to this day, clearly referring to the beef, he became re-inspired, and the album slowly transformed into a double disc. As the concept grew, he felt the need for a 2nd cover, one that showed who he was at that exact moment after everything changed. And when you step back and really look at that, Cole is explaining the shift in real time. After reflecting on the moment that altered everything, he essentially rebuilt the entire album and doubled its scope. That same idea shows up on the Birthday Blizzard mixtape, where Cole talks about rediscovering himself and climbing back into his creative zone. And what we can reasonably assume from that is the beef completely disrupted Cole's mindset, his writing process, and even how he approached rap altogether, with 7 Minute Drill being the clearest example of that confusion. We literally watched Cole act on impulse, release something he later admitted he never wanted to drop, and pull it back in real time. And now, seeing him double down on how much the beef reshaped the Falloff, it's not crazy to say that Cole is no longer operating from the same mindset he had back then. especially when you factor in that he's now taking direct shots at Drake on new freestyles and clearly sounding far more resolved than conflicted. Back then, this was still a pre-GNX Kendrick Lamar world, a pre-Drake lawsuit rap world, a rap game that looked nothing like what we're dealing with now before anyone even knew how to navigate the aftermath of Kendrick versus Mal. So when you take all of that into account, and you see that Cole and Drake aren't speaking, Drake is getting dissed on the mixtape, and the moment that seemingly ended their relationship traces back to a phone call with Kendrick Lamar, there are layers on layers to this situation now. And honestly, it's gone from messy to outright complicated. But here's what Drake fans need to really understand. When it comes to the Big Three dynamic, even if Cole and Kendrick aren't close and may still have tension, the situation between Drake and Cole looks far uglier. Cole seems to carry far more resentment toward Drake than he does toward Kendrick, at least when you listen to how he's rapping about it. And what we're witnessing now is the slow collapse of a relationship we all thought was solid, possibly uncovering how it actually rotted from the inside. And there's a real chance something genuinely disturbing could come out about who Drake is as a friend, how he moves behind closed doors, even towards someone he once hugged on stage like Cole.
Because if history keeps repeating itself, Drake has a pattern of falling out with people who were once close to him. And with us now almost 2 years removed from the start of all this, still lacking real clarity, something has to give. Whether Cole gets more direct or Drake finally responds out of spite, somebody has to explain how J. Cole and Drake went from embracing on stage to not even speaking and trading subliminals in 2026. And so now, with all of that said, let me know what you think about the fallout between Drake and J. Cole. Based on everything we're seeing, how do you read their current positions, how they're moving toward each other, and what do you think is really driving all of this behind the scenes? What does all of this actually mean to you? And how do you think this situation is going to impact the falloff? How do you think it's going to affect Iceman? And the bigger picture, how do you think this reshapes hip-hop moving forward? Now listen, if you made it all the way to this point in the video, thank you, for real. I genuinely appreciate the support. I can't thank you enough for rocking with me. And while you're here, make sure you like, subscribe, and hype if you haven't already, because it truly helps more than you know. And if you want to hang around a little longer and see how J. Cole's project, when you zoom out and look at the full scope, is already creating ripple effects that could make the next few months in rap very interesting. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. So, go ahead and tap that suggested video.